The reading today is taken from Exodus chapter 14, verses 5 through 15. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, the mind of Pharaoh and his servants was changed toward the people. And they said, "What is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us?" So he made ready his chariot and took his army with him, and took 600 picked chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the people of Israel as they went forth defiantly. The Egyptians pursued them, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them, encamped at the sea by Pi-Hahirot in front of Baal-Zephon. When Pharaoh drew near, the people of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them, and they were in great fear. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we said to you in Egypt? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." And Moses said to the people, "Fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be still." The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry to me? Tell the people of Israel to go forward." May the Lord bless the reading of his word. Amen. Please be seated. When I was probably 6 or 7 years old, I took swimming lessons at an area pool. There was a swim instructor there. He seemed ancient to me at the time, probably a very young man. And it was really floating lessons. They taught me how to float. It wasn't really swimming. A lot of other little kids were in the class, and I was petrified of the water and did my best to keep my feet on terra firma and my face out of the water. The final exam for the course was to go to the high dive, which probably was 3 or 4 feet, but was at least, to me, 1,000 feet high, into the deep end of the pool. The teacher was down in the water. I even had water wings on, and he said, "Jump and I will catch you. You will not drown." And all I had to do was trust him and jump. When my name was called, I started walking on the side of the pool, and I got slower and slower, and I got to the rungs of the ladder, and my feet, it was like slow motion, just rung by rung as I ascended the scaffold. And I got up to the gangplank and started walking down the gangplank and saw the instructor thousands of feet below, beckoning me to jump. Another vignette. All these true stories. In high school and college, I had a recurring nightmare that plagued me for a while. I don't know why I had this, but I was on a beach, laying on a beach, and nice sunny day, kind of a steep beach down to the water, and suddenly a massive tidal wave came up and just towered over me, and I tried to run up the hill of the beach, but the sand kept slipping and I kept sliding back into the tidal wave, and invariably I would wake up in a cold sweat. Fear can do funny things to you. The children of Israel set out from Egypt in chapter 13. They had just despoiled the Egyptians, victors in a warfare between God and Pharaoh. They left Egypt as a mighty conquering army. In Exodus 8:14, the text says that they left Egypt literally with a high hand, or as the RSV reads, defiantly, or as the NRSV says, boldly going out of Egypt. They had just witnessed the Lord sending 10 very memorable and graphic plagues, showing that Israel's God was superior to Pharaoh, to his armies, and to all the gods of Egypt. The Egyptians even begged them to leave with all of their belongings and with the wealth of Egypt. But no sooner had they come to the borders of Egypt with the sea before them when they were willing to leave it all to return to the slavery of Egypt. Maybe it wasn't all that difficult to leave in the beginning. They were a big group. The leaders were urging them on. Pharaoh himself had expelled them from the land. Maybe it was pretty easy to be part of that crowd and set out with a high hand, boldly and defiantly. But not very long afterwards, they're lost in the desert with a large and angry army coming after them. I have a good bit of renewed respect, by the way, for the Israelites lost in the desert, and I will be happy to bore you with the details of my own group being lost in the desert of Jordan in May 2013 for 6 hours in 115-degree heat. So it's very seared into my memory. Their meanderings in the desert had not gotten them anywhere but trapped against the sea, against an impassable barrier, with the greatest army of the planet coming down upon them. Who would not want to return to the slavery, the relative safety of that servitude, and the leeks and onions before which they were helpless in Egypt? And it's easier to return to slavery than it is to set out in trust into terrifying freedom. There truly were dangers. The army was real. The sea was real. The deprivation in the wilderness was real. Trusting in the invisible God had resulted in extreme conditions for them immediately. So they were willing to negotiate their freedom for the security of slavery, though only a day earlier they were triumphantly leaving Egypt with bold defiance. But it's only by setting out into the wilderness with all of its dangers and barriers that Israel could experience the power and the presence of God. And I don't think it's particularly different for us today. After beginning our lives as Christians, or after beginning a new ministry, we may begin our journey with a high hand, bold and confident in our new walk, or in our new ministry endeavor. But we encounter problems and barriers immediately. Temptations and difficulties abound. Fears distract and hamper our ministries. We fear we won't be liked. We fear that others preach or teach better than we do. We fear that we may be found out to be the weak vessels we know in our hearts ourselves to be. There's resistance from family, friends, co-workers, classmates. We may be doing well at Austin Grad. I don't even know if there's a student. We have one student. We may be doing well, 2 students at Austin Grad. And then suddenly we take Peterson's Greek course, and everything is then negotiable. We want to return to the slavery of Shipp. The idols of our age distract us and lure us with promises of fulfillment and security that they cannot possibly provide. The ministry that we began with optimism may soon devolve into just marking time, going through the motions of ministry, or in too many cases, leaving the ministry disillusioned after just a few years. For their fears and the distractions that were around them, the impassable barrier, the army behind them, the deprivation in front of them, Moses provided them with the sure word that they ought not to be afraid, but stand firm and see what the Lord can do. The same word he gave Israel is the word given throughout Scripture in the face of fear, which is the opposite of trust. Do not be afraid, for the Lord fights our battles. For the reality of the sea, the deprivations to come, the uncertain future, the Lord simply said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward." God gave them no wilderness travel guide, no boats to cross the Red Sea, no wilderness itinerary so they could see ahead of time where the rest stops and the rough spots on their journey were. The Israelites are simply told, "Do not be afraid and go forward." Nor are we given any guarantees in our ministries, except the guarantee that as we step forward into the wilderness and even into the sea, God's holy presence goes before us. As we confront the challenges of ministry, manifold, the hurting and inconvenient parishioners, the divisions in the church, rampant secularism even in our churches, our own demons, etc., etc. We confront these not alone, but the holy presence of God goes before us and still says, "Go forward, do not be afraid." I stood at the edge of the diving board and I looked down. The instructor smiled and he beckoned me to jump. 6 years old, that's the Red Sea to me. That's the Egyptian army to me. And so I took the step and I plunged. And of course he caught me, and as a result I learned eventually how to swim. I'm not very good at it, but I can do it. More recently, I was on the island of Maui with my family. We went to the North Shore, decided to go to the beach. I saw a sign at the beach there, not realizing where I was, that said, small letters, "Bonsai Pipeline, the home of the 50-foot waves." That day, the waves were a towering 2 inches. The terrifying dreams of overwhelming chaos turned out to be nothing at all. I thought at the time, what a parable this is. What had defined the fears and the chaos, the real and imagined armies and barriers. When the Lord leads us, we do not need to be afraid of whatever chaos may come. For He fights our battles, and His holy presence leads us in the wilderness. Thank you.